Over 200 Texas Rangers and Tonkawa warriors, led by the battle-scarred John Rip Ford, crept through the darkness, their Colt revolvers gleaming with deadly promise. In a flash, the Tonkawa struck, their war cries shattering the calm as they overran the camp, leaving no one alive in a brutal, lightning-fast assault. This was no ordinary raid. It was a defiant invasion into Indian territory, spitting in the face of federal law, aimed at crushing the Comanche Empire that ruled 250,000 square miles of the Great Plains. The clash that followed would see the legendary Chief Iron Jacket, armored in Spanish mail and believed to deflect bullets, ride out alone, taunting his enemies before meeting a hail of gunfire. How did a newspaper editor-turned-warrior orchestrate this daring strike? And what drove the Comanche to fight so fiercely against an unstoppable tide of settlers? Stick around to uncover the untold story of the Battle of Antelope Hills, a vast, wind-swept plain stretching across the heart of North America, where a small tribe from the Rocky Mountain foothills transformed into a powerhouse that ruled the Great Plains. The Comanche, sometime between the 1600s and 1700s, cracked the code of horsemanship, though no one can pinpoint the exact moment this revolution began. With horses, they became unstoppable, their speed and skill on horseback letting them dominate smaller tribes and claim the buffalo-rich grasslands for themselves. By the 19th century, they'd forged Comancheria, a sprawling empire covering 250,000 square miles. Think Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Kansas, and Colorado combined. This wasn't just a homeland. It was a testament to their unmatched power. Their reach went far beyond Comancheria's borders. Comanche warriors raided as far north as Nebraska and Wyoming, striking fear into settlers and soldiers alike, then galloped south, deep into Mexico, looting and vanishing before anyone could catch them. S.C. Gwynn, an Empire of the Summer Moon, paints a vivid picture. A Spanish soldier in San Antonio, Texas, sweating through the night, knowing a Comanche warrior could be warming his hands by a fire 400 miles away in what's now Oklahoma City. That's the kind of dread they inspired. The Comanche weren't just feared, they were respected, crowned the lords of the southern plains by those who knew their wrath. Their dominance was so overwhelming that it reshaped entire nations' strategies. In 1821, the Mexican government, desperate to curb Comanche raids tearing through their northern territories, rolled the dice and invited American settlers into Texas. The plan? Use these newcomers as a human shield to absorb the Comanche's fury. It was a practical move, but it lit the fuse for a much bigger conflict. As American settlers poured into Texas through the 1820s and 1830s, they didn't just step onto Comanche land, they trampled on a way of life. Clashes erupted as these newcomers, hungry for land, tried to carve out farms and towns on the edges of Comancheria. Every fence post driven into the soil was a challenge to Comanche control. Even after Texas broke free from Mexico in 1836, declaring itself a republic, the victory was more symbolic than real. The Comanche still called the shots across much of this so-called Republic of Texas. No military force in the region, not the Texans, not the Mexicans, could match their mobility or ferocity. The settlers might have had dreams of taming the frontier, but the plains belonged to the Comanche, who rode circles around anyone foolish enough to challenge them. As the 1830s dawned, hope for peace flickered briefly on the Texas frontier, but it was a flame too weak to last. The Comanche and the incoming settlers tried to talk, to find some common ground. But these efforts crumbled fast. Mutual distrust ran deep. Settlers saw the Comanche as unpredictable raiders, while the Comanche viewed the newcomers as invaders stealing their ancestral lands. Cultural gaps only made things worse. What one side saw as a gesture of goodwill, the other often read as betrayal. By the 1840s, negotiations were dead, replaced by a brutal cycle of violence that spared no one. Raids and counterattacks spiraled out of control. Comanche warriors struck settlements with lightning speed, burning homes and taking captives, while settlers retaliated with vengeance, targeting any Comanche they could find. Entire families, on both sides, vanished in the bloodshed bloodlines erased in a relentless tit-for-tat that scarred the plains. The body count wasn't just numbers. It was a growing ledger of grief that fueled more hate, more violence. When Texas joined the United States in 1845, the federal government stepped in, building a string of forts along Comancheria's edges to protect settlers. But these forts were more show than substance. The U.S. Army's infantry, trudging on foot, and even their dragoons, mounted but weighed down with swords and clunky musketoons, were no match for Comanche warriors. A Comanche could fire a flurry of arrows from horseback at full gallop, disappearing into the horizon before soldiers could even aim. The army wasn't just outmaneuvered, they were outclassed. Worse, federal policies tied the military's hands. From 1845 to 1850, regulations forbade troops from chasing Comanche raiders across the Red River into Indian Territory, what's now Oklahoma. Soldiers could only strike if they had ironclad proof of a crime, a near-impossible standard in the chaos of the frontier. This created a glaring loophole. Comanche warriors could hit Texas settlements, grab what they wanted, and slip back across the river to safety, untouchable. The settlers' frustration boiled over. They were sitting ducks, and the army was powerless. By late 1857, the situation hit a breaking point. The 2nd U.S. Cavalry, one of the few mobile forces in Texas, was yanked away to deal with the Mormon uprising in Utah. The frontier was left wide open, and the Comanche didn't miss their chance. Raids surged, each one bolder than the last, as warriors exploited the absence of soldiers. Whispers spread among settlers of a massive attack brewing, one that could rival the infamous 1840 raid led by Chief Buffalo Hump. Back then, his warriors had stormed all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, leaving a trail of destruction. Now, with the army gone, settlers braced for a repeat, their fear as thick as the dust on the plains. As the 1830s dawned, hope for peace flickered briefly on the Texas frontier, but it was a flame too weak to last. The Comanche and the incoming settlers tried to talk, to find some common ground, but these efforts crumbled fast. Mutual distrust ran deep. Settlers saw the Comanche as unpredictable raiders, while the Comanche viewed the newcomers as invaders, stealing their ancestral lands. Cultural gaps only made things worse. What one side saw as a gesture of goodwill, the other often read as betrayal. By the 1840s, negotiations were dead, replaced by a brutal cycle of violence that spared no one. Raids and counterattacks spiraled out of control. Comanche warriors struck settlements with lightning speed, burning homes and taking captives, while settlers retaliated with vengeance, targeting any Comanche they could find. Entire families, on both sides, vanished in the bloodshed, bloodlines erased in a relentless tit-for-tat that scarred the plains. The body count wasn't just numbers. It was a growing ledger of grief that fueled more hate, more violence. When Texas joined the United States in 1845, the federal government stepped in, building a string of forts along Comancheria's edges to protect settlers. But these forts were more show than substance. The U.S. Army's infantry, trudging on foot, and even their dragoons, mounted but weighed down with swords and clunky musketoons, were no match for Comanche warriors. A Comanche could fire a flurry of arrows from horseback at full gallop, disappearing into the horizon before soldiers could even aim. The army wasn't just outmaneuvered, they were outclassed. Worse, federal policies tied the military's hands. From 1845 to 1850, regulations forbade troops from chasing Comanche raiders across the Red River into Indian Territory, what's now Oklahoma. Soldiers could only strike if they had ironclad proof of a crime, a near-impossible standard in the chaos of the frontier. This created a glaring loophole. Comanche warriors could hit Texas settlements, grab what they wanted, and slip back across the river to safety, untouchable. The settlers' frustration boiled over. They were sitting ducks, and the army was powerless. By late 1857, the situation hit a breaking point. The 2nd U.S. Cavalry, one of the few mobile forces in Texas, was yanked away to deal with the Mormon uprising in Utah. The frontier was left wide open, and the Comanche didn't miss their chance. Raids surged, each one bolder than the last, as warriors exploited the absence of soldiers. Whispers spread among settlers of a massive attack brewing, one that could rival the infamous 1840 raid led by Chief Buffalo Hump. Back then, his warriors had stormed all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, leaving a trail of destruction. Now, with the army gone, settlers braced for a repeat, their fear as thick as the dust on the plains. With the Texas frontier teetering on the edge of chaos, John Rip Ford got to work. In early 1858, he began assembling a fighting force, rallying over 100 Texas Rangers, each man a hardened veteran of frontier skirmishes or Mexican wars. They set up Camp Runnels near Fort Belknap, Texas, a rough-and-ready base where Ford drilled his men into a disciplined unit, ready for the grueling campaign ahead. These weren't green recruits, they were riders who knew the plains and the stakes. What gave the Rangers an edge was their firepower. Every man carried a long rifle and at least 2 Colt revolvers, weapons that could unleash a staggering 1,500 rounds without reloading. Compare that to the old single-shot muskets. A teenage Comanche warrior could loose 20 arrows, each one deadly accurate, in the time it took a soldier to reload 1 musket. Ford wanted even more firepower, requesting the newer Navy Colt revolvers, but Major General David Twiggs, the Department of Texas commander, had a catch. Ford would have to put the Rangers under federal control. Ford flat out refused. He wasn't about to let bureaucrats leash his men, not when they were planning to break every rule by crossing into Indian territory. To bolster his force, Ford tapped a young 19-year-old Saul Ross to recruit allies from the Brazos Indian Agency, about 12 miles south of Fort Belknap. In the 18th of April 58, Ross brought in 113 warriors from the Tonkawa, Waco, Caddo, Anadarko, and even a few Shawnee. The Tonkawa, led by their 70-year-old Chief Placido, known as Hashukana or Can't Kill Him, were the backbone of this group. Placido's people had deep roots in central Texas, predating even the Comanche, and had sided with Texans during the Texas Revolution of 1835 to 1836. But by 1852, they'd been forced onto the Brazos River Reservation, their lives upended by the same Comanche raids that plagued settlers. For the Tonkawa, joining Ford wasn't just strategy, it was personal. They wanted revenge and a chance to secure their future. Among them was Kichi, a scout who'd once lived with the Comanche, his insider knowledge of their tactics and customs, a secret weapon for Ford's campaign. Ford leaned on the tried-and-true tactics of legendary Ranger John "Coffee" Jack Hayes, stripping the mission to its bare bones for maximum speed. 2 light wagons carried powder and ammo, but food? They'd hunt for it. Horses grazed on wild grass, just like the Comanches did. This lean approach kept the force nimble, ready to match the Comanches' lightning-fast mobility on the plains. It was a gamble, but Ford knew survival hinged on moving light and striking hard. On the 22nd of April, 1858, John Rip Ford led over 200 men, a mix of Texas Rangers and indigenous allies, across the Red River into Indian territory, thumbing his nose at federal laws barring such a move. When questioned later, Ford shrugged off the criticism with a blunt quip. "My mission was to find Indians, not learn geography." For nearly 2 weeks, from the 22nd of April to early May, Tonkawa scouts ranged ahead, their keen eyes scanning the plains. Their efforts paid off when they spotted Comanche camps along the Canadian River, a sign the enemy was close. On May 11, 1858, the Rangers and Tonkawa stumbled upon a small Comanche village near Little Robe Creek, fewer than 12 lodges nestled in the quiet dawn. Ford ordered a cold camp, no fires, no noise, to keep their presence hidden. Just before first light on May 12, the Tonkawa, heads wrapped in cloth to stand out from their foes, launched a ferocious surprise attack. The village didn't stand a chance. Nearly everyone was killed, including women, in a swift, brutal strike. Ford later defended the carnage, saying it was near impossible to tell warriors from non-combatants in the chaos of battle. Emboldened, Ford's force pressed on to a larger Comanche village nearby, but this time, the Comanche were ready. They rallied under Chief Iron Jacket, a 60-year-old war leader clad in Spanish mail armor, a relic from early colonial days. Revered as a medicine man, some believed he could blow bullets away with his breath, a legend likely tied to his armor's ability to deflect arrows. Iron Jacket rode out alone, fearless, taunting the Rangers and daring them to single combat. Ford answered with a volley of gunfire. Bullets struck the chief, knocking him from his horse. Defiant, he rose, knocking another arrow, but a second volley cut him down. His death sent shockwaves through the Comanche, their morale crumbling. At Little Robe Creek, a handful of Comanche warriors made a desperate stand, sacrificing themselves to buy time for their women and children to flee. Every one of them fell, overwhelmed by the Rangers and their allies. The fight stretched into a grueling 6-hour chase across the prairie, a running battle that drained the Rangers' ammunition and pushed their horses to the brink. In a rare moment, Pete Nakona, Iron Jacket's son, and Kona, father of future legend Quanah Parker, led hundreds of Comanche in one-on-one duels against the Tonkawa. Ford, watching the scene, likened it to medieval jousts, calling it a novel show to a civilized man. Despite facing odds of 2-1, the Comanche couldn't withstand the Rangers' Colt revolvers, their rapid fire cutting through the chaos. Iron Jacket's fall and the shock of being attacked on their own turf left the Comanche reeling, forcing Pete Nakona and Kona to lead an organized retreat, shielding their fleeing families. The toll was heavy, around 75 Comanche dead, 18 women and children captured, and 300 horses seized. The Rangers lost just one man, while a Waco warrior fell to Comanche lances. A captive revealed a looming threat. A larger Comanche village, led by the notorious Chief Buffalo Hump, waited further down the Canadian River. On May 12, Ford's men razed the remaining Comanche villages, leaving nothing but ashes. The Battle of Little Robe Creek, also known as Antelope Hills, was a triumph for the Rangers, but the fight for the plains was far from over. On May 13, 1858, the Texas Rangers and their Tonkawa allies, weary but triumphant, started their journey back from the charred remains of the Comanche villages. By May 21, they rolled into Camp Runnels near Fort Belknap, their mission etched in blood and ash. That same day, John Rip Ford sat down to write his report, laying out the gritty details. He praised their laborious, vigilant, and relentless tactics, declaring with confidence, "The Comanche can be followed, overtaken, and beaten, provided the pursuers endure hardships." Ford wasn't just summing up a win, he was throwing down a gauntlet, showing the Rangers could outdo the U.S. Army where it mattered most. The Battle of Little Robe Creek, or Antelope Hills, sent ripples through Texas, sparking a heated argument. Who could actually protect the frontier? The Rangers, armed with Colt revolvers and raw determination, had just crushed the Comanche in their own backyard. Meanwhile, the U.S. Army, bogged down by bureaucracy and plodding infantry, seemed out of its depth. In 1858, Sam Houston, never shy with his opinions, weighed in, proclaiming, "Give us 1,000 Rangers, and we will be responsible for the defense of the frontier." To him, Federal soldiers were a waste of space. Texas grit was all they needed. Victory, though, came at a cost. By late 1858, Governor Hardin Runnels, pinched by budget woes, called the campaign a done deal and disbanded the Rangers. Ford's plans to hunt down the larger Comanche village under Chief Buffalo Hump were shelved, leaving the frontier exposed. The Comanche didn't sit idle. From 1858 to 1860, their raids ramped up, striking settlements with renewed fury. When the U.S. Civil War broke out in 1861, Texas men left to fight, and the plains became a free-for-all for Comanche warriors, who hit hard and fast. The Comanche kept up their fight for years, but the tide was turning. On the 28th of September, 1874, at the Battle of Palo Duro Canyon, U.S. forces delivered a death blow. They slaughtered over 1,000 Comanche horses, the heart of their way of life, and torched hundreds of lodges. Stripped of their mobility and homes, the Comanche could no longer resist, their dominance on the southern plains shattered for good. The Battle of Antelope Hills, fought on May 12, 1858, was more than a clash between the Texas Rangers and the Comanche. It was a pivotal moment in the turbulent history of the southern plains, a story of bravery, loss, and resilience that continues to resonate today. Let's dive into what this battle meant for the people involved and how its impact echoes through time. Despite their critical role as allies to the Texas Rangers, the Tonkawa faced a bitter outcome. In 1859, just 1 year after the battle, they were forcibly removed from their lands in Texas and relocated to Indian Territory, now Oklahoma. This was a heartbreaking betrayal for a tribe that had fought alongside Texans since the Texas Revolution of 1835 to 1836. In their new home, the Tonkawa were forced to live alongside tribes they had fought against, including the Comanche, their long-standing enemies. This relocation was part of a broader pattern of displacement for Native American tribes during the 19th century, driven by U.S. policies and settler expansion. Yet the Tonkawa endured. Today, in 2025, several hundred enrolled Tonkawa members live in Oklahoma, actively preserving their culture, language, and history. Their survival is a testament to their strength in the face of centuries of hardship. One aspect of Tonkawa culture often misunderstood is their practice of ritualistic cannibalism. This was not driven by hunger but was a symbolic act, intended to absorb the strength or spirit of a defeated enemy. Though unsettling to modern audiences, this ritual was deeply meaningful within their cultural context and not unique among indigenous tribes of the time. Even the Comanche found such practices controversial, highlighting the complex cultural differences among native groups. Historical accounts often exaggerated these rituals to paint the Tonkawa as savages and justify violence against them. It's important to separate fact from fiction, distinguishing these symbolic acts from baseless accusations that fueled atrocities, such as those against neighboring tribes like the Karankawa. Understanding the Tonkawa's practices in context reveals their warrior ethos and the fear they inspired, which made them valuable allies in 1858. After the Antelope Hills campaign, John Salmon Rip Ford stepped away from the frontier's chaos. By the 1860s, he had settled into a quieter life in Brownsville, Texas, where he served as mayor from 1866 to 1876. Local politics likely felt like a different kind of war, one fought with words and influence rather than guns and horses. This transition reflects Ford's adaptability, a trait that defined his leadership during the 1858 campaign. His time as a Ranger commander cemented his legacy as a symbol of Texan resilience, but his later years show a man navigating the complexities of a changing world. Far from the plains where he once fought alongside the Tonkawa and pursued the Comanche. The Battle of Antelope Hills was not an isolated event, but part of a larger cycle of conflict that defined the Texas frontier from the 1830s to the 1870s. The Texas Rangers' victory in 1858 was celebrated as a triumph in Texas, but it was just one chapter in a decades-long struggle between settlers and native tribes. The Comanche continued their resistance long after Antelope Hills. From 1858 to the early 1860s, their raids intensified, especially during the U.S. Civil War from 1861 to 1865, when many Texan men left to fight, leaving the frontier vulnerable. It wasn't until the Battle of Palo Duro Canyon on the 28th of September, 1874, that Comanche resistance was decisively broken. In that battle, U.S. forces destroyed over 1,000 Comanche horses and hundreds of lodges, crippling their ability to sustain their nomadic way of life. The Antelope Hills campaign, while significant, was a stepping stone in a broader narrative of displacement and destruction, as settlers and federal forces gradually eroded the power of the Southern Plains tribes. For the Comanche, the Battle of Antelope Hills was not just a military defeat but a profound moment in their fight to protect their homeland, families, and way of life. They were defending a culture and territory they had controlled for generations. The bravery of leaders like Iron Jacket, who rode out alone to challenge the Rangers, and the warriors who sacrificed themselves at Little Robe Creek to save their families, embodies this fierce determination. Their actions in 1858 reflect a deep commitment to their people, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The Comanche's story at Antelope Hills is one of resilience, a reminder that their resistance was rooted in a profound connection to the land and their identity as lords of the Southern Plains. The Battle of Antelope Hills showcases extraordinary courage from everyone involved. Iron Jacket's defiance, standing alone in his Spanish mail armor, is a powerful image of Comanche bravery and leadership. The Tonkawa, led by the 70-year-old Chief Placido, fought with equal valor, driven by their own history of survival and enmity with the Comanche. The Texas Rangers, under John Rip Ford's command, demonstrated grit and adaptability, navigating a grueling campaign with limited resources. The Tonkawa's role as allies was shaped by their own struggles, caught between their alliance with Texans and their fraught history with other tribes. This battle was not a simple story of good versus evil, but a collision of cultures, each fighting for their place in a rapidly changing world. The legacy of Antelope Hills extends far beyond 1858. It serves as a stark reminder of the cultural clashes that defined the Southern Plains, where the drive for expansion came at a devastating cost. Lives lost, communities uprooted, and the delicate balance of the plains forever altered. Yet, the story is also one of enduring strength. The Comanche and Tonkawa, despite immense losses, have preserved their heritage. In 2025, Comanche communities continue to honor their history as skilled horsemen and warriors, while the Tonkawa, with several hundred enrolled members in Oklahoma, maintain their cultural traditions. The Battle of Antelope Hills is woven into the fabric of Native American resilience, a testament to the ability of these communities to rebuild and thrive against the tide of history. This battle, with its tales of Iron Jacket's defiance, Placido's leadership, and the Rangers' relentless pursuit, reminds us of the human cost of conflict and the enduring power of cultural identity.